Welcome back, guys. So today I wanted to show you quickly the possible repair or maintenance operation you could have to perform on your best gaming companion, so your Dualshock 4 controller. As you can see, I have a total of 5 now. 4 I bought them for my old PS4 because friends come over rather often, and we play couch co-op games up to 4 players. Then another one came with the PS4 Pro. I would say that the Dualshock 4 has not changed so much externally during the current lifetime of the PlayStation 4. So with the PlayStation 4, the main revision is now that we have different material, different plastic and rubber for the thumbsticks and the buttons, because these thumbsticks, as you will see shortly, I had to replace them a couple of times on my controllers. And there is also now a light bar which shows on the touchpad. There is a clear plastic window which will show the controller color also on the front side. So now I will show you how to disassemble the controller, because I'm going to replace, as you can see, this controller, this particular one, as a damaged left thumbstick, so there is a little bit of crease there. And in my experience, I only had to disassemble my controllers for 2 reasons. Replacing the sticks and the analog levers, because after some use, especially if like me, you do a lot of competitive stuff on FPS, MOBAs and so on, you really use your sticks a lot, and by applying pressure on the sides, eventually they will get a crease, or the rubber will basically become cut on the side and then loosely come off. The other thing which happened on a couple of controllers, and I think it's due mainly to shock whenever the controller is dropped or you just toss it around and it gets some vibration, is that the touchpad stops working because inside a connector, inside the touchpad itself, a connector is just detached. So it's really easy to fix, you just need to disassemble the controller. And now I will show you how to proceed. The tools you will need to disassemble the Dualshock are really simple. You just need a 2mm Phillips head screwdriver. About the replacement sticks, because on this one I will be replacing the left analog stick, you can find them on Amazon. My advice is look for a quality replacement which has basically the whole surface of the stick is hard, because sometimes you find cheap sticks which just have a center plastic holder and then all of this the edge is soft rubber, so as soon as you press them you will basically cut the rubber at the center point. So just look for something which is a quality product, because it's really important if you want your sticks to last. So you start disassemble by turning the Dualshock upside down and by removing the 4 screws which are on the back side. And as I said, they are 2mm Phillips head screws. So you start by removing them. So now that you have removed the last screw on the back, you're ready to separate the front frame from the back frame. So my advice is, basically the triggers are together with the front part where all the PCB and the electronics are. So my advice is to try and be careful, because when you start by opening and separating the front frame from the back one by pressing and pulling up the front part here on the separation line, which is really easy to see because the front part is glossy while the back one is matte. So just be careful when you pull up, try to do it slowly, because it will crack, separate at a certain point, but if you're careful enough you will be able to avoid to detach the R2 or L2 triggers, which are quite a pain in the ass to reassemble due to a small spring. Okay, so you pull up carefully here, and the same on the other side. Hope you can see it clearly. There is basically the pin which is holding then the screw in place. As you can see now it's opened and the triggers are still attached. So by just pressing down on them slowly and carefully, you could theoretically separate the frame without detaching them. There you go. Okay, so that's, if you are able to do it, that's how it should be done. So you now have the front part, which is removed from the back part, and the triggers are still in place. Then depending, so I wouldn't say that on the DualShock 4 on the interior much has changed during the years, but there are some revisions. So in most controller, this little rubber piece will come apart, and it's just a plug for the reset button. So just, it's normal, it will fall off. I will show you how to reassemble it. Just keep it aside and don't lose it. So now that we have separated the front from the back, there is a strip connector here. Hope you can see it clearly on the camera. Which connects the back LED to the main PCB on the front side. And this is easily disconnected by pulling this blue tab. Again, I mean, on some versions I have, there is no blue tab, it's just a orange-ish color, but in any case this will be a connector which you can separate by pulling on this tab and separating it from the main PCB. So we will now have removed completely the back part, the back frame, which just has the PCB and a connector for controlling the USB charging port and the LED bar. So now you can clean this one with some air, compressed air, with a toothbrush, a toothpick. If you want to give it a good clean once in a while, it's always a good thing to do. Now we can move to further disassembling the front part. There is another screw here which we need to remove, and it's underneath the battery. So now be careful about the battery. You could either disconnect this white connector here, or just keep it in place. Just be sure that it doesn't dangle around too much, or you don't accidentally yank the battery, because you could damage the two wires for the power supply. So now we have to remove this last screw. It's the 5th one, and it's the same size as the others. So just remove it. There we go. And just pick it up and put it aside. It's exactly the same size, so don't worry about mixing them up. Then now we are basically ready to separate everything from the front plate. Just as a side note, I will show you how to disassemble or reassemble the triggers in case you have disconnected one of them while disassembling the DualShock. There is a small arc spring here, hope you can see it clearly, which is the one which ensures the return of the trigger once you have pressed it. So now the trigger itself has 2 pins which snap inside the plastic, and the spring goes on the inner side, so towards the battery. You just insert it inside the hinge basically, and then one side of the spring goes inside the trigger, the other one goes in a recess right here, where you basically put everything together on the plastic. So the only thing is just to be careful to hold the spring slightly in place before you actually push down and reassemble the trigger. But I mean, it's, once you see how it's done, it's really easy to reassemble, so don't worry if the trigger just came off while you were disassembling the DualShock. Now, to further disassemble the main PCB from the front frame and replace the analog sticks, we just have to disconnect another small connector, which is the one for the touchpad, and it's on the upper part of the PCB, and there's a blue tab, or again, depending on the revision, an orange-ish tab or something else, but in any case, just by pulling, this connector comes off, and now the PCB is ready to basically come off the front frame, and also the touchpad will remain there. So you can see now that the sticks will come off with the PCB, so just be careful, and because there are the connection to the 2 motors for the vibration, so just tilt it on the side, don't pull it, don't yank too much, so you don't damage those connections. Now you can also theoretically remove, if you need to, the whole front assembly. Maybe some buttons will come off if you need to replace also some of the buttons. So now what you heard just falling off are the the share and the start button, which they will come off and they just go face down with the pin facing downwards, and you cannot mistake one for another because they have a plastic groove on the side which will tell you the right orientation. So just put them back in the front frame, which now has the touchpad, the two buttons, and in case you need to clean or replace all these rubber contacts for the digital pad or the normal buttons. So now on the other side you are left with the contact board and the PCB. So to replace the analog sticks, now just tilt the contact board away from the PCB for a second, and you can just grab the PCB, carefully pull up, and the stick will come apart. So your damaged stick will be removed, and you can now install your replacement, so the new one, just by pressing down. Be careful that there is an orientation, because this thing is not square but it's like a rectangle shape, so you need to put it with the right orientation and just press down once it's inside. There you go. You now have your analog stick back in place. Just check your PCB in any case. If you want to give it a clean, just use some compressed air or a toothbrush, whatever. Don't damage anything. And you can now put these pieces back together. Be careful of the wires, and then we will later reassemble the thing. So now just check that the analog sticks are correctly placed and everything is working as intended. Then, if your touchpad is malfunctioning, this could be due to two different causes, but it's always linked to the same thing, which is the strip connector. It could have detached on this side, which you would have already seen while disassembling and already fixed, or most likely the inside connector, which connects the strip connector to the PCB of the touchpad, has become loose. So now, to further disassemble the touchpad, we need to remove it from the front frame, and you just basically rotate it backwards, so it comes off, it's free to come off, and you are left with the touchpad itself. Now, to disassemble it, you just need to remove this black plastic piece, again black. It could be of a different color depending on your hardware revision, but it always comes off. There are two glue points, and it just comes off by pulling with not so much force, I would say. Just be careful, because you could easily detach the connector while disassembling it. So I will try not to. There we go. Okay, now you can see where your problem could lie. So on this inner connector, the strip connector might have come loose due to vibration. So just check that it's completely inserted. There is a black line for reference in this case. Just put it back and reassemble everything, so the glue will just work again. It's a special kind of glue which really avoids using any screws. So just be careful about how the connector is placed, and there are some reference pins which will help you in finding the right spot for the plastic. There we go. So now it's correctly reassembled, and there you have it. So now you have basically checked and eventually replaced the only two things which in my experience can malfunction on your Dualshock 4. So now you're ready to reassemble everything back together, and it's really not that complicated. So we start from the touchpad, we install it back on the front frame by rotating it correctly, and then we take the new brand new analog stick with the touchpad and the PCB, and we reinsert it back on this side. Just keep the mind the touchpad connector, which you need to lift up to then be able to reconnect it to the PCB. And now we need to find the right orientation. There we go. So this one has to go back inside, and it's done. Okay, so check that everything on the front part is properly fit and working like this. Okay, and now you're ready to basically reinsert the screw which was behind the battery. So just be careful, because now your hand is holding everything together. And then just start screwing this one in. You don't need that much force, it's just a screw which puts everything in the right position. And now you can turn your controller upside down and check the option share button. The sticks now, so the new stick is properly placed, the height is the correct one, the fitting is good. And after this, you don't forget to reconnect the, you can use a pair of tweezers which will help you, and you should reconnect the front touchpad connector to the main PCB board. Just push it down. It always has a black line, at least in this model, to use as a reference to understand if everything went back in correctly. Okay, so don't forget about this little rubber guy. So it's the cover for the reset button, which goes on the side of the battery. Now you're ready to reconnect the back part to the main PCB with the USB and the LED bar connector. So check the orientation and just connect it back. Always use the black line if there is any for reference. You can also use a pair of tweezers, or if you find it hard, maybe you have bigger fingers than I have. And now it goes back in. It's connected correctly, and you can then reassemble the back part starting from the trigger bar. So those, let me show you better on the camera. So you should start always by fitting those two plastic bars in between the triggers, and then you should move to the front and push down on these plastic pieces to make the cover start to fit back in. There you go. Then check again on this side that everything is going in correctly, and you're now ready to press down and make everything snap back together. And now you're only missing your screws on the back, which I won't even show you since it's really easy. And now you have your brand new, well, your old Dualshock controller, which is again in perfect working order. So ready to keep gaming on. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like this video, and leave any suggestion, question, curiosity you might have in the comments below. Thanks for watching.